I learned a tough lesson many years ago, and Ven-Allen Lubin is learning the exact same right now. You get what you negotiate.
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Tuesday, June 10th, 2025. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade. You're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks so much for making this your first listen or watch. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Get in on that. Special shout out and welcome in to the everydayers who are with us, all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, and of course, our Locked On Tar Heels insiders. What's up? Let's get after it. Coming up on the show today, here's where we're headed. With me being gone last week on vacation, I didn't get to talk about Ven-Allen Lubin's decision to transfer to NC State. Ew, gross. But okay, it's part of the era that we're in. So I want to unpack a whole bunch of different angles with that, give some takes on it. And so we'll do that for the first two segments of the show. And then there's more to unpack with the house settlement. Yesterday, we talked on the show about the revenue share side of it. We talked about the NIL side of it. Today, I want to talk about the roster limits side of it, because that's a whole new thing as well. So that's all the places we're headed today. I'm excited to get into it, but also kind of like, oh man, come on, Ven-Allen, what are we doing here? And that's where we start. Ven-Allen Lubin enters the transfer portal and said at the time, hey, but don't worry, I intend to come back to North Carolina. Basically, I don't have the actual tweet pulled up, but that was the gist of it, right? And ultimately, there was some noise that started to crop up with Will Wade going to NC State, and that's where Ven-Allen Lubin ends up going, is down the road to Raleigh, to NC State. And boy, does that, I mean, it's just like, first off, come on, man, at the NC State, if he was going to Hawaii or Nebraska or any other random school, like, it wouldn't matter because it's like anybody else in the transfer portal era right now. But Ven-Allen, man, like, and I get it. Will Wade is a good basketball coach. He's building something. Like, we can't miss that as Tar Heels. And honestly, that's a good thing for Carolina. It's a good thing for the ACC, for Carolina, for Duke, for State to all be good, for Wade to be good, for that matter. But Ven-Allen, man, that's tough. But ultimately, it's a business decision, and that's what it is right now. And here's kind of what it is for me. This business decision is so emblematic of the landscape of college athletics right now. It is less about rivalries and I can't play for you because I am this, right? Like, I can't be a member of the Wolfpack because I'm a Tar Heel, or vice versa. Or I can't be a Blue Devil because I'm a Tar Heel. We haven't seen that yet. But in this day and age, it's more about I gotta go to take care of me because that's where I can get money. And I if that's not emblematic of the times, I don't know what is. And I don't know about you, I mourn that a good bit, right? Like, I think that's part of what's lost as we lose out on the amateurism model is we have the transfer portal, which is part of player empowerment, and that's great. But when somebody has gone from school to school to Carolina to NC State, and I'm not saying that that's on Ven-Allen Lubin. Like, some of it is just the nature of what's happened, right? Like, Mike Bray left Notre Dame, Stack got fired at Vandy, and here he comes North Carolina. Like, sometimes that happens, and that kind of thing is why I like the portal, right? Like, you should have empowerment as a player to leave if your coach is done or gone. But I think because of that revolving door, we don't, like, it would be wild. Think of how different it would feel if RJ had gone to NC State, or if Seth Trimble this offseason, a career-long Tar Heel, was like, I'm going to NC State. Like, I think that feels different than Ven-Allen Lubin doing it. Does that make sense to you? But still, you're going from Carolina to State, man. That's tough. He is now the second Tar Heel in the transfer portal era. But there was one, I forget who it is, but like a long time ago, they went from Carolina to State. But in the transfer portal era, he's the second player to be a Tar Heel and then eventually be a Wolfpack, with Dontrez Styles being the other. The difference is Dontrez had a little Georgetown buffer in between. For Ven-Allen, man, he's going straight from Chapel Hill, packing up his bags, dropping off the blue, and going to pick up the red. Man, that's tough. And I think a lot of people look at this and say, well, he was lying with that tweet. He never wanted to come back. I actually don't believe it. I don't think that's true. I think Ven-Allen truly, honestly did want to stay in Chapel Hill. I really think he wanted to be back. But things played out differently than perhaps he thought they would, or he believed they would, or how about this? Or that he was advised they would, which is a thing in this day and age too. And that's part of this era as well, is when you're making business decisions, the players are not the only ones making business decisions, because this is part of the game now. If you want to get paid, if you want to be part of a business, then it's going to be a business, and you're going to make business decisions, and Jim Tanner is going to make business decisions, and Hubert Davis is going to make business decisions, like it or not. But if the players are going to act like a business, then the money is going to act like a business too. And I think that's what Ven-Allen Lubin learned the hard way. I said it in the cold open. One of the first, I was in the midst of grad school, and I took a year off from it to lead worship for a traveling ministry where we were doing an event ministry for junior high students, and I was leading the band for that. And that was like the first time I had ever done like independent contract work, and I didn't make as much money as several other people on that tour who were more experienced than me. Why? Because I didn't know I was supposed to negotiate and look out for me. And after my contract was in place, the leader of this thing said, he looked at me and he said, "Isaac, this is a lesson you will never forget. You get what you negotiate." And that's where things went awry for Ven-Allen Lubin. From reporting that has been told directly to me, from reporting we've heard from other Carolina outlets, Tar Heel Illustrated, I think Inside Carolina has talked about this as well, that Ven-Allen wasn't thrilled with his compensation. Others in the portal are making more, both around the country and guys coming into Carolina, be it Veesaar or Kyan Evans or Jarin Stevenson. The problem for Ven-Allen is that he had already negotiated. He already had his contract that he had signed the year before. It had been reaffirmed in the spring. And there it is. It's set and it's ready to go. If you've already negotiated, you don't get to redo that because you realize that player X, Y, or Z is getting a higher number than you. That's not how this works, man. And if you wanted a better number, you needed to renegotiate that. And that's where the issue falls for Ven-Allen. And if a better or different option comes along, like a better player, which it's debated, like, with Veesaar, yes, I think definitely. With Jarin, I think he is. Maybe the stats haven't borne that out yet. Whatever. But Carolina's going to go after that because they got to take care of Carolina. And that's what I want to look at more next. If Ven-Allen had stayed at Carolina, what would that role have been for him? And by the way, what's his angle on this whole thing? What is he trying to accomplish by going to State or going anywhere? I want to look at that and more as we continue to talk about Ven-Allen Lubin and why on earth he's going to Raleigh. We'll do that in just a second. Hey, right after I tell you about FanDuel, the NBA playoffs and specifically the NBA finals are in full swing. Every night, man, it delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on that action than right now. What's cool is that FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game, both before tip-off and in the midst of the game, in live real-time action. That's so cool. With player props or performance trends or same-game parlays, fans like you have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. This series is tied at 1. It should be 2-0 Oklahoma City, but boy, they just pooped the bed there at the end of game 1. But now it's game 3, tied at 1, headed back to Indy. And even though the Pacers are going to be at home, the Thunder originally started at -4. It's moved to -5 now. So if you think Indy can get within that number at home, check it out. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head on over to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets. That was awesome. So go ahead, make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, we're talking Ven-Allen Lubin and why the heck homie is going to NC State, to Raleigh. Why would you make this decision? What on earth are we doing here? Why aren't you back at Carolina as you said you wanted to do? Well, let's look at this angle of it. Where I want to go next is role. Ven-Allen Lubin, in my opinion, and I would imagine most of your opinions, was not going to start at the 5 this year. That's going to be Henri Veesaar. Sure, they'll battle and he would have had a shot because Hubert Davis is going to give him his opportunity. But I firmly believe Henri Veesaar wins that battle and wins it quite comfortably, I might add. Okay, so then if he's not going to start at the 5, well, maybe he goes and starts at the 4 and we get back to a more traditional Carolina 2-big system. Maybe that's the thing. Okay, well, look, he's not starting over Caleb Wilson. It's just not going to happen. And even if it's not Caleb, I think what Jarin Stevenson, what he brings at the 4 is more than what Ven-Allen Lubin would bring at the 4 from a defensive standpoint, etc. And Jarin's got some things he's got to prove. But Ven-Allen's not starting at the 4 either. And so, for my money's worth, Ven-Allen Lubin's coming off the bench this year in the role that he should have been, oh, by the way, last year, if Carolina had been able to take care of their roster the way they wanted to. So had Ven-Allen stayed at Carolina, my firm belief is that he would have been the backup 5. In certain lineups, maybe he gets some minutes at the 4. I just don't see that very much. I mean, I guess you got to try him and Veesaar together, but ultimately he's the backup 5 playing the role that he should have been playing all along at Carolina. But there it is. And so at NC State, here's the thing though, he's not guaranteed a starting spot at State either, right? He'll battle for it, but will he get it? We don't know. And I don't want to just look at this solely through Carolina blue colored glasses. I want to try to think about it through the Ven-Allen Lubin side. I've said this. How many times have I said this? You got to get while the getting's good. For Ven-Allen, this is his 4th and final year of college athletics, unless, people are able to sue and get a 5th year, and that's the whole thing. Whatever, we'll see. But he, as I've said about so many others, is probably most likely in the best money-making opportunity of his basketball playing life. Maybe he would be able to get a higher contract or a better deal overseas somewhere. But, look, I've always said I'm going to be honest. Let me be honest. He's not an NBA player. It's true. So for Ven-Allen, you got to get what you can get while the getting's good. Get what you can get while you can. And if he didn't feel like what he was getting at Carolina was that number, or that he could get more elsewhere, then I can understand him leaving to go pursue that, which is college athletics right now. That's what it is. And that's what we're talking about. Just the fact that it's NC State. That's why this is so frustrating, I believe, to go back to that conversation of the first segment. And for Ven-Allen, as I said, this is his last year. So there's no opportunity for the, think about, I go to MLB because I'm a baseball guy. If I've signed a 1-year deal or I'm in the last year of a contract and it's a contract year, I'm a ball out, I'm a show out, I'm a get in the best shape I can, try to hit 350 and 50 jacks or whatever it is, right? So that I can get paid somewhere else. Ven-Allen doesn't have that opportunity because this is it. This is his last opportunity. So if he's locked in at Carolina, he can't up that ante. And so if he enters the transfer portal and Carolina doesn't budge, Carolina says, sorry, you're locked in, then he goes somewhere else to find it. And here's a massive part of this that we've got to keep in mind. Think back several years to the way that NIL money has just blown up exponentially year after year after year, right? Last offseason, summer of 24. Think about Coleman Hawkins pulling out of the draft. Think about Great Osibor, who wound up at Washington after being at Utah State. Both of those guys, it was reported at least, got around $2 million. And that was like, what? Are you kidding me? That's crazy that somebody would make that kind of money. This offseason, 2025, it's like, oh, $2 million, cute. Like that's how quickly and exponentially these things continue to change. And it was true last offseason. Those $2 million was crazy compared to what guys were getting in 2023 offseason. And right, you can just keep stair stepping down. And so it makes sense then, and it adds up that were Ven-Allen Lubin signing a new deal this year, he would have made more money than the 2-year deal he signed last year, or not consequently, flip-flopped. Conversely, that's the word I'm looking for. Were Henri Veesaar coming last year, or Stevenson or Kyan Evans, their number wouldn't have been as high, right? It's just, to me, it's less about what Ven-Allen Lubin is worth, and it's more about the changing ceiling of NIL dollars, especially this year as it's blown up with everyone trying to get what they can before the House settlement was finalized, right? And so that's where all of this is coming from. The number isn't about, we don't believe in you, Ven-Allen Lubin. The number's about, that's what you signed up for last year when the numbers were smaller. You wanted something better, you should have signed a 1-year deal. Or, whatever it is. And so, and if you don't like you don't have to run off to somewhere else. You want more money? Then get in your agents here and say, I would like more NIL opportunities. How do we make that happen? Do I need to brush up on my acting skills? Do I need to learn an instrument? What do I got to do to get more NIL compensation? Like there you go. There's your money. And so that's the Ven-Allen Lubin side of it. Is I think it's just to me, it all boils down to timing. That's what it is. He picked a wrong time to sign a 2-year contract and probably shouldn't have done that. Probably should have signed a 1-year or some kind of provisional 2-year. And this is why we got to continue. Like if this is the road we're going down, you kind of see the stair steps toward even more professionalization. The House settlement is not the end game. It's just another stepping stone, in my opinion. And then the last thing is keep in mind about this from a Carolina team perspective. They've got to build a roster here. They're already calculating in their budget the number that you have committed to and said you're going to play under. And then that's how they know what they've got to spend on other people. And like we talked about Seth earlier, Seth Trimble's not renegotiating things. He's coming back. He's doing it for Carolina. And it's tough. But again, it's timing. Ven-Allen has made his decision. He's going to NC State. Congrats to him that he doesn't have to play in the Dean Dome this year. But boy, let's go to Raleigh, to the Lenovo Center, as it's called now, and just mop the floor respectfully. Because it's like, I don't win. I don't have any ill will towards Ven-Allen. Do I wish he was somewhere else other than NC State? Absolutely. Come on, man. That's where you picked. But the competitor in me wants to respectfully mop the floor with Ven-Allen and NC State. There doesn't have to be hate behind that. There doesn't have to be, it's not treacherous. He's not a traitor. Just, it's it's just a reminder of how dumb everything is right now, right? Like that's all part of this as well. So there you go. There's my thoughts on Ven-Allen and his move to NC State. Now, on yesterday's show, we began unpacking the House settlement and the various parts of it. We started by discussing rev share, then we moved to NIL, and today I want to talk about another part of the House settlement, the kind of the third big part of it, which is newly imposed roster limits. And there's several things to this. Got some what I think is really helpful info with that, and we'll unpack that in just a second. Hopefully you were with us on yesterday's show. We started talking about the House settlement. That would be really good framework for you to go back and listen to or watch if you've not already done so. But one of the things we discussed is the newly formed College Sports Commission, which we will refer to on the show as CSC for short. They have a great website. Like if you're a nerd like me and you want to read up on all this and not just take my word for it or other people's word, because y'all, I've been hearing and seeing a lot of stuff, and people are out there saying a lot of stuff that's just patently wrong. Like I read somewhere like the 20.5 million in revenue share. Somebody I saw, I forget where it was on Monday, said that each school gets 20.5 million. And that ain't it at all. The school's got to come up with that money themselves if that's how much they want to give out. So like, just be very careful where you're getting your information. Like my pledge to you is to do my very best to give you the truest, most honest information. But if you want to get it from the horse's mouth instead of from me, go read the College Sports Commission website. I've got it bookmarked already because I'm going to be a regular there to make sure I am caught up so that I can inform you and fill you in with the latest stuff. So one of the things that you're like, let's just put this in basketball terms and then we'll talk about other sports as well, but it's probably the easiest for us to start with. For a long time, basketball has had a scholarship limit of 13. There are 13 full rides for men's Division I college basketball. You can dole those out however you want, but typically it's just 13 full rides that are handed out. You can have however many guys you want above and beyond that for walk-ons, but you can only have 13 scholarships handed out. And each sport had its own thing. I'll just scroll. What is baseball like? 11.7. Beach volleyball was 6. Fencing for men, 4.5. Women's fencing had 5. How about that? Men's football, 85 scholarships. So everyone had a scholarship limit. Part of what the House settlement is abolishing those scholarship limits. Hey! But what it's putting in instead is implementation of roster limits. So getting rid of scholarship limits and in its place, putting roster limits. Does that make sense? Let me read to you directly from the CSC website. For those schools participating in the House settlement, that's a key part of this. I'll come back to it. NCAA scholarship limits have been removed and roster limits have been established for each sport. In parentheses, should say in its place. Under this new model, schools will have the option to offer partial or full scholarships to every student athlete on a team's roster, as long as the student athletes stays within the sport-specific roster limit as outlined below. Meaning, for men's basketball, the assumption has been, and this is what the House settlement includes, that the roster limit for men's basketball is 15. By the way, women's had a scholarship limit of 15 already, and it stays there. So they have a 0 increase. So men's goes from 13 scholarships to 15 roster spots. And schools can choose to use all or none of those and can break them, partial or full rides, whatever you want to do, but you cannot exceed 15 players on your roster or 15 scholarships is part of that too. Whereas before, let's say you used all 13 of your scholarships and then you had 4 walk-ons, you had a 17-person roster. You cannot do that right now, no longer, even if it's a walk-on. Just simply cannot do it. Now, what's true for basketball, at least in the transfer portal era, coaches or, Coach Davis and a lot of other schools around the country are doing this as well, haven't been using those 13 scholarships anyway, because they don't want to have a guy, or let me say it this way. They haven't been using those 13 scholarships on scholarship level players. What they've been doing is saying, hey, in this transfer portal era, if I use 13 scholarships and I'm only playing 10 guys, then those 3 scholarship level players on the end of my bench are frustrated and mad and gone. And that's another PR headache I got to deal with. So instead, coaches are reducing the number of scholarship level players they've been awarding scholarships to 10 or 11 players. And then they would give the rest of their scholarships to walk-on level players. Well, now that number is up to 15. I don't think it's going to matter all that much for college basketball, aside from, if you had 17 walk-ons, you got to cut 2 of those spots. And if you needed those for drills or whatever at practice, I guess you got to find a way to do that with your managers or assistant coaches now. Can you have practice players only? I wonder if that's the thing, because I did that in college. I'm thinking about this in real time. I organized a men's group of basketball players to scrimmage our women's team. I wonder if you could have practice players who aren't technically on the roster. Interesting. I need to follow up on that. But anyway, so I don't think this is going to change that much for men's basketball specifically, because if I'm Hubert Davis, I'm still using 10, 11 of my scholarships on scholarship level players. And then if I have walk-on level players, I will give them the rest of the scholarships. But also, as schools are trying to find ways to save money, because again, they've got to come up with that $20.5 million that they can hand out in rev share on their own. That's just not handed down to them from the NCAA. Whoa, right? No, that's not a thing. And so it's like, if I don't use all 15 scholarships, that can go back into the fund to pay our guys. I don't know if that's what's going to happen, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if schools do that. But even if a guy's like, no, I'm good, I got enough NIL, I don't need a scholarship. Well, you still can't pass 15. That is the thing you got to know now about where this is at. Now, there's another part of this. Teams are going to have to eventually cut players out to get under these limits. For example, football is going to be a bear for them. The scholarship number previously for football was 85. That number, the roster limit now is 105. So you could actually have 20 more scholarships if you wanted to, but teams were having like 150 total guys on their roster, including walk-ons, and they just can't do that right now. So if you had 150 guys, you're basically cutting a third of your roster out, because you can't have more than 105. And that's crazy. That's wackadoodle. But that's where we are, and that's what this means for it. Now, here's the weird wrinkle of this, and actually this is the sticking point why the House settlement actually took so long for the judge to finalize it, because there were a lot of schools in anticipation of this reduction down in terms of several of the rosters. Schools were starting to either cut current players or remove scholarship offers from student athletes that would have enrolled this year. So the judge put a thing in, or made them put a thing in, for designated student athletes is the term, and we'll call them DSAs. This is from the CSC website. Quote, designated student athletes are those student athletes who are either one, on the school's athletic rosters as of April 7th, 2025. That was actually the day of the national championship game for college basketball for the 24-25 academic year, or 2, an incoming Division I athlete who was recruited or promised by a school a roster spot before April 7th, 2025 for the 25-26 academic year. And basically what those DSAs are going to do is, this language comes from Christy Dosh, who does, I've been reading a lot of her stuff. She does a great job. She writes for sports business, about sports business for Forbes. She's fantastic. But what she says is, any current college athletes cut from teams because of roster limits, in addition to those recruits, they will be labeled as DSAs and, listen to this, will not count against roster limits at their original institution or any institution where they transfer. They will remain DSAs for the remainder of their collegiate eligibility. So this is going to actually mess with roster sizes for the next 4-ish years, perhaps. Meaning, let's say Carolina, in advance of this news, was like, I'm sorry, Seth Trimble, we're going to have to let you. Obviously, that's completely hypothetical. It would never happen. But Coach Davis was like, sorry, Seth, you're out the door. Well, this means that Carolina could have brought Seth back and he wouldn't count against their roster size, or Seth could go to a different school and he would carry that DSA designation and wouldn't count against that school's roster size. Or let's say it was Caleb Wilson who's coming in. Let's say Carolina had pulled his scholarship because we're not going to have space for you. Well, he is now labeled a DSA and could come to Carolina for 4 years, not count against the roster size, or go anywhere around the country and not count against the roster size. Isn't that crazy? It's like COVID all over again. Remember when the players with COVID eligibility, the first year, maybe first 2 years of that, they didn't count against scholarship limits. It was like when Leaky did it, he was just extra. It was bonus. But then when Armando did it, he counted against the scholarship quota. So it's like that. So that's going to be a very interesting wrinkle. So are walk-ons done? I think that's the big question. Not necessarily, but that might differ from sport to sport, right? We might not have certainly not as many walk-ons. I think that is certain with it. And so, roster limits, man, this is a whole new part of this. So I just want to keep unpacking as much of this house settlement for you as I can over the next bit. And as we get more questions answered and things like that, I'll continue to unpack it for you. If you have questions about it, please continue to ask that, whether by joining the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, that link is in the show notes, by reaching out on Twitter or wherever else, by becoming a Locked On Tar Heels Insider, where you get direct access to me and you can ask those questions. That link is also in the show notes. If you've not subscribed, by the way, to the show on video and audio, make sure you do that right now so you don't miss a second of Locked On Tar Heels. Been great to be together today to talk about Ven-Allen Lubin. Would love to hear more on your thoughts about him as well as the house settlement. You guys, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again tomorrow, but until then, peace.